So CropPro is part of the National Diagnostic Agronomy Initiative under the GRDC Service Delivery Platforms program, and I led this project through to delivery in terms of a diagnostic agronomy tool, decision support tool if you like, for the southern region grains industry. And it sits in, I guess, in a small stable of related projects, and Katherine's here to talk to you about eXtensionAUS, and both the field crop diseases and the crop nutrition components of those really do overlap subject matter and add some, I guess, liveliness to the content that's available relating to what CropPro is about, which is helping people manage constraints, especially in wheat and canola. I'm also project managing a new project called Push Notifications, which is a national initiative under the GRDC delivery platforms to really accelerate the delivery of time-bound urgent information around pests and diseases and novel weed outbreaks across the entire grain belt in Australia. And that's just getting its legs now, and we're in the consultation phase and building some tools behind the scenes. So I've always promised that I would do live demonstrations of IT tools, but I've gone conservative on you today, partly because the site was having some conniptions yesterday. So we're going with some screenshots. So this is the homepage, a bit of a blurb here around what it delivers, but it really is about efficient identification, putting identification tools in the hands of people who aren't pathologists, who aren't nutrition experts, who aren't invertebrate pest experts, and being able to help diagnose constraints in crops that appear to be underperforming. The target audience is a combination really of the advisory sector and growers who would like to get their eye in or have a first crack at what they think it is before they perhaps bring in some expertise. That diagnosis then leads you through a path to looking at what sort of good science-based, evidence-based information is available to inform the decision making about can I manage this, can I improve the situation, the crop outcome. And then there's an economic tool which is there to help make some decisions around is this intervention, is this extra input of investment into this crop actually going to pay for itself, and what are the risks in that. At the bottom of the page we've got Twitter feeds both from Crop Nutrition from eXtension, Field Crop Diseases eXtension, and then we pick up some of the GRDC and the Victorian grains Twitter accounts just for really up-to-date information here. And here's someone here talking about James Hunt's work in sowing time last year from here, so it's all pretty lively. You can pick up on the latest themes that are going on under those subject headings and more broadly in the grains industry. The unique offer of this tool is the diagnostic keys. There's one for wheat and one for canola. These were developed by Doug Sawkins in DAFWA, and we've worked with the West in licensing, but also making this targeted to the Victorian, South Australian and Southern New South Wales grains industry. And I'm just going to quickly show you what the process looks like in wheat. So essentially the tool asks you fairly non-technical questions about the crop that you feel is underperforming. In this case we've got, it'll ask you the growth stage, is it before or after head emergence, what kind of symptoms, in this case it was leaf symptoms, what are those symptoms, and it'll ask you is it stripes, is it, what is it, in this case it gives you the opportunity to choose something like powdery pustules, grey fluffy growth, and it's got little postage stamp sized pictures that you can bring up and compare if you want to in the field. And then of course it drills down to the choices finally as to is it the brick red, the yellow orange pustules and stripes, light brown pustules, etc. And you can select down until you come up with, say, a suggested diagnosis of stripe rust. So when you do that, there's a thumbnail, that was the word I was looking for, a thumbnail here which you can click and that will bring it up in high resolution. And also clicking on this document takes you to a landing page. And that landing page is a pretty concise description of stripe rust, its description, symptoms, the sorts of damage you might expect or has been seen, and I guess the summary around control. Now, as many of you will probably know, there's a pretty broad range of resistance to stripe rust in varieties that are out there. Mace for instance, seems to have a bit of life in it as far as people choosing to grow it, but it's also very sensitive, very susceptible to the disease. And so control obviously relates back to the degree of resistance in the varieties that is in play. And things like the Crop Diseases app and the various state and regional based crop variety guides give you that sort of information about what you're dealing with if that's not to hand. And I think most importantly, it then links on to good evidence-based resources, links to other sites where there is the greater depth of detail around each constraint. In this case, we've gone into the Crop Disease Manual, which Frank Henry and Grant Hollaway and others have put together out of Victoria. That's available online. It's actually hosted in this service. And here, if you click through to stripe rust of wheat, it also provides you with the comparative pictures of, say, leaf rust, stem rust. So you can really make sure that what you're looking at is it's diagnosed what you really think it is. And then if you scroll down through this content, it will talk about the fungicide options and a whole range of factors. Okay, so we've diagnosed that to our satisfaction. I guess you could then jump across to, say, eXtension and sort of look at, okay, well, here's how stripe rust worked in one season on a range of varieties. Mace and Wild Catcham at the top here, Axe and Livingston at the bottom. And this is the leaf area affected over time. And you can see here that depending on your variety, intervention with fungicides is a really different strategy between something that's very susceptible to something that really isn't. And so that's the sort of information that will put you in a good position to start putting some numbers into the options tool, which is an economic model that was put together out of the Queensland DAF statistics team. And Andrew Zoll is the man who poured his heart and soul into building this. And this tool essentially asks you to put in, and early in the season you might not know a very tight yield range, but say 1 to 5 tonne potential yield. If the season's kind to us, we could get a good biomass going and we could expect to get a higher yield. A bit of Nostradamus effort on what am I going to be able to sell my wheat for. Then it'll ask you, what's the potential yield cost to you for not treating stripe rust? And this is going to be heavily influenced by the idea that whether your variety is susceptible or has some good resistance. So you're back in this area trying to work out what these numbers should look like. Then you can basically apply treatments. And so I've just modelled 2. An efficient treatment that's cost efficient. It's 1 spray of a fungicide, maybe a propiconazole, one of the triazoles. And then what it's asking you to do is to say, well, if I do this 1 spray, how much yield loss may I expect if I only put 1 spray on and the disease conditions are still conducive to stripe rust? And so you might knock that back from 30 to 70 to, say, 15 to 30. And you say it's about $20 per hectare applied as the chemical treatment. Then if you're being really risk averse in terms of any yield loss, you might put in a program spray, 3 sprays for an effective control, maybe at tops 5% yield loss, but it's going to cost you $60 a hectare. So that's just a nominal scenario. Of course, costs here depend on the chemical choice, the rates, that sort of thing. And if you're early in the season, your program spray may never come about if the seasonal conditions won't support stripe rust really getting a run on, and also your yield window will tighten up as you proceed in the season, so you can tighten up that scenario too. So the output looks a bit like this. First of all, it shows you what your net likely income in dollars per hectare is for do nothing, for the 1 spray, for the program spray, and that's 255 as compared to 199, and this is 286 compared to 199. So here it's saying the net effect of the treatment is a gain of $56 or $87 worth of additional yield. The time that the treatment is the best option, that's purely on the total net income at this level, but then it's saying the average return on investment shows that for every $1 you spend on the spray here, remember you spent $20 on a single spray, you're getting an extra $56 back, so that's a 280% return on investment. And the probability of breaking even, it's coming out as 100%. You should always get that money back given that stripe rust is in play. Over here, because you've spent 3 times as much, but you're not seeing a proportional increase in yield effect, then whilst it's still saying you're getting a good return on investment, $1.45 for every dollar spent, probability of breaking even, still pretty good, 92%. So that side of it, it's basically giving you maximum yield scenario here and a best sort of return on investment over this side. Graphically, this gets a bit busy. Graphically, it's graphed the 3 options. So control, that's do nothing. In the middle is the 1 spray, and this orangey yellow one is the effective, is the program spray. So there's a bit of stuff going on here. So the maximum best case net income is up here, but the probability of getting there is reasonably rare. Up here you see it effectively a 50% chance. That's how the system interprets the most likely outcome. So the most likely income here was about $196 as compared to $250-ish and $280-ish. And so the difference between these curves horizontally is the net benefit between treatments. And the worst case net income is down here. And that's where you see that these 2 treatments cross over. And effectively that's saying that where this is your net income, you could say, well, let's actually convert that to yield. In a lower yielding seasons, clearly the most costly treatment is less likely to pay for itself. It's less likely to be the best option. And so that's where this comes through. And again, another way to plot this, and the statisticians love this, net income, the probability of exceeding a certain net income. So if the probability of exceeding $400 income with no sprays is, what's that, about 10%? Up here you're talking about 20% chance of an income of at least $400, but with all the sprays, you're sitting higher up. Now, this whole process can be sort of rubbish in, rubbish out. Those numbers you put into the model are pretty important because it has a big influence here. And as the season progresses, if you put your 1 spray out and the season becomes no longer really conducive to stripe rust getting a run on, then you could go back to this model, tighten your yield profile in this model, and start again and look at, is it worth going further? So these models could be probably best used by people who have the expertise to understand the potential yield losses from these sorts of sides of things. And the other way to interpret this is also to look at it almost in a decile scenario. 20% of worst years, this is where you might be, in which case there's not a big difference. In the sort of an average year, perhaps, you can see that the single spray is modelled to be significantly better, and the marginal increase in benefit is not so great with an extra 2 sprays. And in your higher yielding years, the differential and the payback obviously is higher. I'll go through that. And again, just to highlight, the net benefit between treatments is really around there. And at the end, it basically says, well, in 22% of years, the single spray would pay for itself. Inevitably, those are the lower income years, potentially where the season hasn't supported a high yield crop either way. And again, as I've touched on, varying the wheat price, the yield estimates, thinking about the chemical use and the rates that are in play, and really looking at the downside risk in a drier season where your yields come in at the lower end of the range, then those higher input cost treatments are possibly going to be less of a return on investment. And this isn't really about telling you to suck eggs. A lot of you know some of this. I think some of the tools, the modelling tools, may be good either to demonstrate to clients or also as training tools for junior agronomists. And in that line, one of the things we are aiming to achieve is to integrate the use of these sorts of tools with the training and education sector, and all the universities and the TAFEs in the southern region who do teach crop agronomy have given it a try and have all been very positive about that. And we've developed some case study packages so that graduates out of a crop agronomy program should be conversant with this, but have also picked up the tools that sit behind it. So I'll finish there.
Okay. I'd like to thank everyone for coming along today. It's good to see you here. And I know that, you know, you've come here, you've taken 2 days out of your busy schedules to actually come here. And I'd just like to ask you for a moment to think to yourselves, why did you bother to take these 2 days out and come down to Adelaide? You know, what is it about being here that actually makes this worth your time? And reflecting on that, I'm hoping it's because you're actually got that chance to catch up on all the big issues. You know, you might be sticking around for the subsoiling manuring talk next, or you might be going over to Hugh's talk on cereal diseases, or maybe the Beat Western panel. But it's about, these 2 days are about you knowing what's going on and hearing it particularly from the experts themselves. And I guess that's a point that is important, is actually hearing it from the experts. What have they got to say about things? And we, in the last year, have tried to build something called eXtensionAUS. It's a pilot that we've done over the last 12 months. And our aim was to try to bring together the experts from around Australia and build a community of practice so that they could particularly deliver to you the information that direct from them. And ideally also, it's about bringing together the information from wherever it is in Australia. And you know, with the rationalisation of government services, sometimes the expert's not here, they're not in South Australia, they might be in WA. So what we were aiming to do was bring together and build a community where those people could work together to make it easier to bring that information to you. So, I mean, I guess when we set out to do this pilot, we were asking ourselves, well, can we do e-extension better? Everybody's got their own website these days. There's a SARDI website, there's a DAFWA website, there's a VIC, we don't know what the name of it is this week, website. And you know, and some of them tweet and some of them have YouTube, but for you, it's, you know, you're out there using the tools on the web trying to find stuff. We know 100% of advisors use electronic devices to find their research, to get their information. 98% use websites, 84% use their tablets or mobile phones, and also 70% of advisors have actually expressed an interest in having some sort of two-way contact with experts. Not knowing what that might be, but it would be good to be able to access them. And that's the question is, you're here today, but what do you do next week? What do you do next month when you want to know something? What do you do when something happens? And that's what happened last year with Beat Western, is people needed access to the expert information, but they weren't here in this room at the time. So the eXtensionAUS pilot, as I said, we ran it last year, aiming to bring those experts to you. And who's seen this map? Couple of arms, thank you. It's an interactive session, you're allowed to say hello. So this map was one of the primary pages that we put up on eXtension last year. And basically we started out with the Victorian Deputy was doing the analysis or the testing of all the canola samples for Beat Western. And we had all the samples for South Australia and Victoria, we had the results and the locations. So we thought, wouldn't it be great to map it? Because prior to that, basically you put in the samples, you got the results back, but there was no bigger picture. So we started mapping it. We did Victoria and South Australia. New South Wales, whom we were in contact with because of eXtensionAUS and as part of this community, they said, well, hang on, we've just been giving you the samples, now we're going to give you the locations and then you can map ours too. So it was more about building a national picture and a sense of perspective on what was going on. Incidentally, WA also, who was doing their own testing, they said, we're going to give you our results to put on this map as well because we don't have it and we need WA to know that. So even though it's a national system, we can have those nuances of understanding the differences in the regions. Now that page had 1,500 views last year, and we only launched this website at the end of June. So it's a totally new, unknown equation. We had some Twitter accounts to go with it as well. But people found this information and they were obviously very interested in it. Some of the other things that we have as part of eXtensionAUS, as I said, we're trying to encourage the ability of people to interact with the experts so that in 3 or 4 months when something happens and you need to ask that question, we have a widget in there called Ask an Expert, and it's basically you fill in this online form. This one's for the field crop disease, and you can scroll down to ask a question on crop nutrition, which is those are our 2 main areas at the moment. And you fill the form in, send it off, an email comes in, it goes to the expert most relevant depending on the disease and the location. And you can get a response by email. And obviously I just need to pause here and just mention that garbage in, garbage out scenario. You know, if you send in a picture of this is something vaguely yellow in my paddock with a few spots on it, what is it, what do I do? Then you're not going to get a very good answer. So, you know, you need that extra bit of paddock history. Have you treated it with fungicide? You know, what varieties, what's happened? You know, all that sort of stuff. And I guess, so that's our main aim, is to use this to provide that 2-way system that you can get access direct to an expert. The other thing, there is actually facility for comments on the bottom of the articles, which is a bit different from your government websites. But if you have a specific question, this is more the place to ask it. Some of the other things we've been doing is trying to integrate other sorts of electronic media. So we use Twitter a lot. We have the 3 Twitter accounts. There's Oz Crop Diseases, AU Crop Nutrition, and eXtensionAUS. eXtensionAUS is more for project or general extension stuff, whereas the other 2 are specific about nutrition and disease. And we will tweet what we've put up on our website. We'll retweet GRDC's content. When CropWatch SA puts out an alert about something, we'll also tweet and say this is the big issue that was in it this time. And the other thing we've been doing is video. The nutrition team have had a few more people trained up in video, and they're using their mobile phones to capture video of people at conferences like this. So they're making these short 1 to 3 minute videos, and to date they've had over 1,000 views, and they haven't been there that long, most of these. So they're often also embedded in our website as well, and they're available to embed in other websites. So recently DAFWA did a webinar, and we've now put that on the YouTube site, and they hope to embed that back in their website. The other thing that we experimented in last year was the fact that when Beat Western broke out, there was 1 billion websites with 1 billion bits of information, and which one do you go to? And you have to be a super sleuth to work out which bit you need to know when. And I sort of thought, well, this is wouldn't it be great if you could just go to one place and somebody would have compiled it for you and said, this is the new bit, this is the new bit, you don't need all this other noise. So we looked at a curation tool called Scoop It, which allowed us to pick out the key information about Beat Western. So rather than having everything scooped onto here, it's like a big scrapbook, but rather than stick in every single article, we were just picking out, well, here's the key ones about the spread, here's the key management guides, and the updated information, the radio interview, whatever the source, we could put it all in one place. So when there was an issue happening, if you just subscribe to this one thing, you could get the updated information that we considered was the key information. And Nutrition is also experimenting with something called Paperly, so they're doing a weekly newsletter that's specifically about nutrition. So just in closing, I'd like to point out this is the project team, GRDC, Vic, Economic Development this week. New South Wales DPI runs the nutrition pilot, and eXtension in the US is the partner that we're working with to provide this whole integrated system of electronic stuff. And I mean, some of the other things that we're doing is we're actually using their training systems as well. So we've trained people in how to use, the experts in how to use Twitter and stuff. And I mean, Hugh now has a Twitter account that he wouldn't have had a year ago because of us. So the summary points I want you to take home is obviously visit eXtensionAUS.com.au. If you have something that you need to know, by all means ask an expert. Ask an expert first. Follow us on Twitter at these accounts, and I guess our key point is that with the national RD&E strategy and national research program, we believe that an integrated national system of extension is the best way to ensure timely access to information for you. Thank you.